When you think of Spider-Man, you probably think of this. Or this. Or maybe even this. But what you probably don't think about is the 2003 animated series that aired on MTV. Yeah, crazy, right? I've never heard of this show either until starting to do research for this tier list that I'm doing. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that this is the worst Spider-Man TV show I have ever seen. Have you guys ever watched something that gave you like a physical, visceral reaction? Because that's how I felt after watching this show. I just got done watching all 13 episodes of Spider-Man the New Animated Series from 2003 that aired on MTV. And this show is so bad. So stick with me through the course of this video as I explain and I just kind of recap every horrible thing about this show and the very small, minute details of the show that I actually really enjoyed. Starting off with the things that I do not like is the art style. I'm going to give it a little bit of slack because this was 2003 and when the show was probably developed it was even earlier than that. And I get the animation at the time is trying to go for this new like edgy adult style animation, and it's also called Spider-Man the New Animated Series, so it's trying something completely different to differentiate from Spider-Man the Animated Series and the Spider-Man Unlimited show as well. So I can kind of give it credit for trying something new, but just because you try something new doesn't mean it's good. You can try something new and it still be terrible. And that's what this art style for this show is. Now, another thing I want to get into before like recapping and doing a deep dive into this show is something that isn't necessarily the show's fault in 2024, but did not help my experience at all when watching the show. So I originally watched this show, I want to say about a year ago with my fiance at the time. And we watched the party episode, which is I think the best episode in the show, but it's still not great. And so I turned it on, and you get the origin story of Max Dillon becoming the Electro, and that was episode 1 on Disney Plus. I want to say like mid 2023. Well, when doing research for this video or for the tier list that I'm going to be doing, I was like, okay, what show should I watch next? And I was like, oh, I'll do the new animated series because one, I've never watched it, and I also just reviewed the animated series. But when I went on Disney Plus, the show's no longer on there. It's not on Disney Plus anymore. So I had to find a way, I'm not going to tell you how, I had to find a way to watch the show, right? Because I'm not going to pay for this show. And so I found a way to watch the show, and it's all out of order too. And I'm going to put up on the screen where I found on Reddit to watch, like the watch order for this show. But I'm still not completely sure that this is the right way to watch it. The way I watched it online had the same order of episodes that the Reddit post had. But then there was also so many different Reddit threads and so many different like articles that said the correct way to watch the show. One of the few things I really liked about this show was the character dynamic between Peter, MJ, and Harry. The only saving grace for this show is the fact that like the relationship building between MJ and Peter, the on again, off again, is the most interesting by far out of the entire show. That is the only thing I care about, and yeah, I'm a sucker for romance, but the Spider-Man parts of this show are so laughable. They're so bland, so uninteresting. I could not keep myself from zoning out and like daydreaming when Spider-Man was on screen. But when Peter and MJ were on screen, and Harry, I was actually entertained. They had like a will they won't they for 13 episodes. And Harry's this frat boy that inherited his father's company and his empire. And when I fan wrote Tom Holland's Spider-Man 4, this is what I wanted the character to be like. And I never got this inspiration from the show before because I wrote the fan writing before I watched the show. But this is like my perfect adaptation of Harry. It doesn't really touch on it a whole lot in the show, but Harry's essentially... He's not like an alcoholic, but he's constantly drinking, and I feel like if this show had more time to flesh out Harry's character, it would show him go down this alcoholic side. But he also is just like embarrassed to be part of like the heir of Norman's empire, which also, side tangent, I know I'm like rambling right now, but Norman is never brought up, never introduced, and at the end of one of the episodes, they're talking about how Harry found all these like secret files in Norman's laptop and stuff, and it's hinted that he might become something else, or like, oh, there was this government this and this and this. But he is never touched upon, and it is so frustrating. Everything about this show, I cannot like accurately put all my thoughts into how much this show annoys me. So I love Spider-Man. Spider-Man's my favorite superhero, and if you're watching this, he's probably your favorite superhero too. And that being said, I feel like I can find something out of every adaptation of Spider-Man to appreciate. So my original plan for this video, I was going to watch each episode, and like I took notes of each episode, and I was going to kind of create this narrative and spin of like going down and like breaking down each episode and the whole series as a whole, because it's only one season. But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to devote that much time to this terrible show. First thing, I don't like the voice actor. Neil Patrick Harris, phenomenal actor, great guy. But all I can hear is his character from How I Met Your Mother.
Single file, ladies. No fatties.
Hey, Scaly. Know where I can get a little tail?
One thing from episode 1 that I really did like is it shows the direct contrast between Peter and MJ. Peter is very shy and he is always being dodgy and not upfront with his emotions no matter who he's talking to. MJ, on the other hand, she's an activist. She is upfront with her feelings and emotions and is always being the one that's chasing Peter. And this is very different, I feel like, from all the other adaptations of Peter and MJ. MJ's the one chasing Peter, and Peter's always running away. Versus in other adaptations, Peter's chasing MJ, but can't commit to her because of his Spider-Man duties. Another thing that's going to be reoccurring throughout this whole series, which I was only hoping it was going to be in episode 1, but sadly it wasn't, is the villains. This villain has like a Savitar suit on from The Flash, and he's like a speed guy. I feel like I'm pretty well versed in other Spider-Man rogues, but I don't know who this guy is. He was awful. I liked the music in this show, though. This isn't anything to, like, super applaud the show for. It's pretty standard, like, retro wave, cyberpunk-esque music, but I like that type of music. I always put it in my videos as, like, background music, so I will appreciate the music in this show for that reason. The main villain in episode 2 is Kingpin, and we don't have a Daredevil adaptation show up in this show, but it is hinted at that this is, like, the Spider-Man in the Sam Raimi universe. Because if they were going to tie in the Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck, they would have had his Kingpin. And so the Kingpin model is this like really buff black guy, which is modeled from the Daredevil movie. And I think that's pretty neat. But I don't like this version of Kingpin, the fact that he has like this cane or baton that he can shoot like lasers out of. Kingpin's not supposed to really have any like gimmicks or gadgets, so I don't know why he constantly has one in this show. And he's also eating food throughout this entire episode. And it's like a running gag through the 20 minutes that he's this fat guy that's always eating fast food or cupcakes and stuff. But in my mind, Kingpin's always just been this brute force, like muscular guy. Yeah, he's on the heavier side, but it's not because he's like a fat slob. Overall, episode 1 and 2 aren't anything special to me. I didn't really feel that invested in Spider-Man or any of the villains and their reasoning. Again, the main thing I was invested in was Peter and MJ's relationship, and that's only 2 episodes, but I'm confused on what's happening so far. At the end of episode 1, she kisses Peter, and so I'm like, oh, okay, are they kind of just like in the beginning of their awkward relationship? Because, you know, every relationship at the beginning has like their awkward phase and stuff. But then at the end of episode 2, she kisses Peter on the cheek and walks away and has a tear in her eye, and then it seemed that she's walking off with this other guy, this blonde guy that we've never seen before. And it's later on explained in like a whole another episodes down the road that like that's one of her acting partners, but the episodes are constantly so like juggled around, I can never tell what's going on continuity wise. So going into episode 3, I was giving the show the benefit of the doubt, right? Not every show is going to be perfect amongst its first 3 episodes, but episode 3 is when this show completely lost me. This is the Lizard episode, and this show goes 0 to 100 so quick. Now, I'm not being hyperbolic and I'm not exaggerating that. Within the first 2 minutes of the episode, before the opening credits, we're introduced to Dr. Connors. We see him explain why he has one arm in like this rush sentence to Peter. He rushes Peter out of the lab and he injects himself with lizard DNA. Again, this all happens within 2 minutes. No backstory, no nothing. He's like, yep, I got one arm now. And then he just straight up injects himself and we cut to black. So at the end of episode 3, the lizard falls off the helicopter and he falls to the ground and splatters on the concrete. And we see a little tear come from his eye, but it's never resolved as if like the lizard's dead or what's happening. This show is not shy to be bloody or be like gruesome and, you know, be an adult theme. Heck, a character has a tramp stamp later on in this show. But at least like have a resolution with these characters. This isn't anything about the show trying to be edgy or anything. This is just poor writing. This is poor storytelling. How are we supposed to care about Spider-Man facing these villains if we don't know if they're defeated, if they died, or if Connors turns back to Dr. Connors instead of the Lizard? Nothing happens. This show, there's no resolution with any arc or any characters in this show, and it is so frustrating, especially being a Spider-Man fan and caring so deeply about these characters. Seeing them done poorly it enrages me. Why are we making adaptations of characters if we do not care about the characters in general? If we want to change the story and change the direction of what these characters are going to be, that's fine. If it's done properly and done in a good story. But if you're just going to change characters and then not have the story service them, what's the point? We get a knockoff Black Cat. I don't know if there's like a licensing issue, and I don't care enough to look it up. Cheyenne seems to be the mix of like Black Cat and the Prowler with her purple color scheme, but it's never touched upon. And that's something that the show does terribly. It's one of my biggest complaints with the show. There's no backstory for any of these characters. Each episode, spoiler alert, introduces a new villain, and they don't show back up. They don't come back up throughout the whole series. It introduces a villain, the villain gets defeated, and that's the end that we see of them, right? And yeah, that's like very standard superhero TV show stuff. But there's no like reason or backstory for any of these characters. We don't see anything related to Spider-Man or Peter Parker's past. And I don't think that there has to be for every adaptation of Spider-Man or Peter Parker, like, oh, Uncle Ben died, and this is where I got my powers by being bitten by a spider. We don't have to do that. We clearly see in Homecoming, Tom Holland's Spider-Man doesn't have an origin story that we see on screen. And that's fine. There's so many adaptations of Spider-Man, so we can just go into Spider-Man media without having to know his specific backstory. But at least give us little hints of what happens, especially with the characters too. Or else why are we as the audience supposed to care about these characters? One good character writing bit that I have to give this show a little praise for as well is MJ being scared and shy to like express her feelings to Peter. We see a scene where she's like pacing back and forth that like I'm sure we all have done, like practicing your lines of what you're gonna say to your crush when you ask them out. This is one of the few instances of good character traits and good character writing in the show. In the same episode, in episode 6, we have these like Russian KGB people come in and start demanding, like they want to see Spider-Man, so they take hostages and all this stuff. It's so bland. That's all I can say to describe the show, is that it's bland. And I just don't care at all. I'd rather watch Peter and MJ go on their movie date that they have planned. But after Spider-Man saves the day, he gets kissed by this news reporter lady that has a crush on him named Indy. And then MJ watches that, and like they don't go on their date because she thinks that Peter's cheating on her and all this stuff. And this 10-second scene of Indy kissing Peter and MJ being shocked and feels like Peter's almost cheating on her made me actually feel something. This is the most emotion I felt in 6 episodes, and it's not a lot. And that's not good for the halfway point in this show. The fact that I have not felt almost anything while watching this show. Hopefully the back half of this series will get more interesting. So starting the back half of this series, in episode 7, Peter Parker's in science class when he meets an ADHD goth girl who's obsessed and in love with Spider-Man. After getting electrocuted, she develops schizophrenia where Spider-Man... She develops schizophrenia where Spider-Man is now like talking to her in her head, full Green Goblin style. She then tries to jump off the top of a building and unalive herself to see if Spider-Man will catch her. But at the end of the episode, goth ADHD schizophrenic girl kidnaps MJ in order to meet Spider-Man in person, and then she's quickly defeated by Spider-Man making an elevator fall through the elevator shaft and breaking ADHD girl's neck. And that's all we see of her. Again, we never get any resolution with these characters, or the villains to be specific. It's so stupid. Episode 8, The Party, is regarded as the best episode of the series, and I don't know if I really agree with that, but I definitely felt the most empathy and emotion in this episode. Max Dillon is the only episode in this series so far that has any depth or any character development, and I can speak for everyone when I say I can feel the emotion and I can understand being in Max's shoes where he just wants to fit in. Max in this episode pledges to a fraternity and wants to fit in and be accepted by them, but because he's a little weird and is an outcast, they bully him and they take him to the basement, make him do this weird fraternity ritual, and shoot him with paintballs, and ultimately makes him leave the party and start crying. The transformation from Max into Electro is heartbreaking, purely by the fact that he's kind of right for his reasoning, but he's ultimately wrong for the choices that he makes. I'm pretty sure that Max kills one of the guys from the fraternity that bullies him, and if Spider-Man wasn't there, I'm pretty sure he would have killed everyone. As a kid, I never really empathized or understood the complexity of superhero villains, because oh, you like the hero because they do the right thing. But as an adult, maturing and growing up, I can actually empathize and I understand with a lot more villains, but specifically this version of Max. Episode 10 introduces us to Sable and her private security team. Why we're being introduced to Sable and her security team before any, and I mean any, of Spider-Man's rogue gallery, besides Electro, is mind-boggling to me, but I felt no emotions throughout this whole episode, and this included Harry, MJ, and the news girl, Indy, getting kidnapped. There's no resolution with these characters either at the end. The Sable security team just kind of goes away. I was struggling to even pay attention at this point, but thankfully episode 11 introduces us back to Electro, and this is when I sat up from my seat and I started to wake up and I realized, oh, this is the first example of good writing, good storytelling. We're getting a reoccurring character. It shows us the power of reoccurring characters and villains. And then in episode 11, Max comes back and he attacks his professor and tries to kill her. I'm not sure if she dies, but I heard like a flatlining noise after she got electrocuted, so I'm pretty sure she's dead. One thing to point out though, and I don't think this is necessarily a design, like a choice by the people that made the show, but Electro is terrifying. It's very analog horror-esque in this episode and the show in general for his design. It is so scary, and I think that's like the best part of this whole series is Electro's like terrifying, like static analog horror design. The plot to this episode, I kid you not, is so like it's so Electro. It's so petty. Sally, the girl that was at the party that smiled at Max Dillon for 0.1 seconds before he got turned into Electro. He's in love with her and wants him to turn her into his Eve for his Electro Adam. This is insane. He injects Sally with so much electricity. I cannot imagine that Sally survives getting shocked like this. The face that she's making also is terrifying. I'll put it on screen right now. Do you think that Electro was scary in this episode? She is getting electrocuted to death by this creepy stalker man that looks like an analog horror monster come to life, and now she's being turned into his Frankenstein's monster. This is awful. I love it. One thing I forgot to talk about until looking at my notes for episode 11 is that like every few episodes, Neil Patrick Harris does voiceovers, like narrations for Peter Parker. It's so stupid. Either like do every episode have like a voiceover, but don't do like a continuity error where some episodes will do a voiceover and some episodes we won't. It's so stupid, and hearing it like have him voice over in like narration, it just completely took me out of the episode. Like I was so invested in this episode because Max Dillon is a freak, and then at the end, once it all gets resolved, after Sally gets burnt to a crisp, Spider-Man's like, well, that's not good, as it like fades out. It's so stupid. So here we are at the end of the series. Episode 12 and 13, part 1 of Mind Games. And this is the best part of the show, I'm not even gonna lie. Purely for the fact that it's the last episode. This show sucks. I can't wait for this show to be over. The 2-episode arc of the series finale starts with the driver of this car getting double pumped straight to the head execution style. So let's talk about character assassinations. Kraven the Hunter is introduced in this episode, and he's reduced purely down to a man that wears like animal print and shoots a crossbow. That's it. You know, Kraven the Hunter, the guy, like the huge bulking guy that like kills animals and is the best hunter on Earth and wants to hunt Spider-Man because he's going to be a new challenge for him. No. Kraven the Hunter, this crossbow shooter. That's my Kraven. So in episode 12, Kraven kills MJ by stabbing her in the neck with a needle. And it's later on revealed that Spider-Man is like hallucinating and is still under mind control. But you want to know how much I don't care about these characters in this show? When MJ got stabbed in the neck and then she instantly dies and we see her tombstone the next scene, I burst out laughing. It is so funny. This show is so laughably bad. And I'm forgetting to make it even worse. Stan Lee voices a character that tells Peter Parker to go kill Kraven. And it's so sad now that Stan Lee has passed away. But his character assassination of telling Peter Parker, not like, there's no Uncle Ben or Aunt May in this series. So there's no like moral authority figure to tell Peter Parker like, you always need to do the right thing. With great power comes great responsibility. No. Stan Lee voices this random guy at the graveyard and it's like, you should kill Kraven. So Spider-Man's like, all right, I'm going to go kill Kraven. And then it cuts to black and then now it's time for part 2 of the arc. The last episode of the series starts with Spider-Man getting his get back, and he hangs Kraven from his webbing. This is insane. This is the black suit Spider-Man that I want to see. He's hanging Kraven from his webbing. That's wild. But this is something he never does, I feel like, with mind control. But you know what? This character is so far from the character of Spider-Man and Peter Parker that I know. I don't care if this version of Spider-Man's killing people. I just want to see something actually interesting. So I actually do like this fight between Kraven and like the evil mind control Spider-Man. Spider-Man was not holding back. He was like punching the ground, doing damage to the ground. Like you can tell he's not holding back. But then after being defeated and Kraven's put into police custody, I mentally checked out. I was done. I don't care at all. The villains in the Spider-Man show are arguably, if not the most important part of Spider-Man in like nailing a good Spider-Man show or media. And the villains in this are tremendously and painstakingly bland and boring. Like I said, Kraven is just reduced down to Crossbow Man. Sable is reduced to like this silver girl that just flirts with people and wants to hit you with her sticks. She's not threatening. All the other villains just died. I want to know if there's a reason that none of the other villains, like none of Spider-Man's big rogue gallery, were not used in this show, and why they were all like fake made up characters. But I just don't care. I'm not even going to look it up. That's how much I'm done with this show. So then we get another fake out death where Spider-Man thinks he's killing the Wonder Twin girls. Like the girl that's like mind controlling him. But no, he pushes Indy, like the news reporter girl. He pushes her off a building. And it's revealed that he puts her in a coma and she doesn't wake up. And this is supposed to be this like really sad like Gwen from TASM 2 moment. But it's so funny. It's so stupid. I'm done with this show. I love Harry because his constant hatred for Spider-Man is like the one continuity in this show that's actually interesting. After finding out that Spider-Man's the one that put Indy in the coma, they're sitting there in the hospital looking at Indy's body and Harry's like, I know why this happened. Your buddy Spider-Man pushed her. Harry is a D1 hater, dude. I love it. But the main villain in this show, the like Wonder Twin girl, is defeated by Spider-Man crashing her semi-truck into a wall and she blows up and dies. There's no heroic moment like in Homecoming where Tom Holland's Spider-Man tries to save the Vulture from blowing up. There's none of that heart or anything. Spider-Man just kills his villains in this show. Why? Because we're on MTV and it's edgy. That's why. We can say sexual jokes and show our characters with tramp stamps. And this version of Spider-Man kills people. Because we're on MTV. This warehouse scene where the Wonder Twin girl blows up feels like it's ripped straight out from Instagram Reels. This is insane.
But I'll be on Instagram Reels for an hour watching, people get hit by Mustangs during takeovers.
So I talked about the voiceover a little bit and how like inconsistent and annoying it is. Well, this show ends on the most depressing Spider-Man ending of all time. I'm not sure if there was supposed to be a season 2 or if they got canned like halfway through the series, which they should have, and realized that they weren't making a season 2. But this show ends with Peter giving up being Spider-Man. He has a depressing voiceover and narration where he's like, oh, well, I couldn't have saved Indy. This is it now. I'm going to stop being Spider-Man. And he puts his suit in a briefcase, fills it with rocks, and throws it in like the Hudson River or whatever. I get that Spider-Man gets depressed all the time. That's his character, right? Bad things are happening to Peter and Spider-Man. But he always gets back up. Even Andrew Spider-Man says that in No Way Home. He's like, I got rageful. I stopped pulling my punches. I got bitter. But then he realizes that that's wrong. I would imagine this version of Spider-Man from the TASM universe. I don't even have to imagine. It's shown in No Way Home. He becomes Spider-Man again after giving up Spider-Man. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man in Spider-Man 2 comes to the realization that the world is better with Spider-Man. But no, this Spider-Man just gives up being Spider-Man, and that's the end of the series. MJ gets rejected, all of the characters are depressed, Harry has zero resolution to any of his character arcs, he never learns that Peter's Spider-Man, he never learns that Spider-Man's trying to do the right thing, he never gets any resolution, and then Indy is in a coma that she will never wake up from. The doctors even say it. This show ends in like the most depressing and bleak ending possible for Spider-Man media. I wish this show would have got it. No, I don't. I don't wish this show got a season 2. I wish this show was never invented. This show is horrible. Between the sexual undertones constantly being thrown around in this show for no reason other than the fact that it's like a millennial, zany, haha sexual undertone show. And the fact that none of these characters are interesting. All the villains die. I was falling asleep throughout this show. The one thing I wanted was Harry, this alcoholic friend of Peter, to become evil and just destroy Spider-Man and beat him to a bloody... No. Nothing like that happened. This show is so painstakingly boring and uninteresting. F tier. This show is terrible. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. A little different than my past videos. It's more of like a rant because the show is awful. I'm probably going to do like Spectacular Spider-Man or Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends next. Something that like is a good palate cleanser that I actually enjoy. This show's awful. Don't watch it. If you do watch it and you hate it, don't come to me. I told you not to watch it. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. A little different video than the past. Throwing this on the rating, obviously it's an F tier. Hopefully the media and like content I watch in the future is better. I'm going to keep up with the tier list. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. We're almost at 500 subs. My goal soon is to get to 500 subs by like the end of April or so. So I think we can do that. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what type of content you'd like to see from me in the future. That's about it. Take care of yourself. Bye.